I'm KY4BDP Brian. This week on LCARA Ham Radio, we're going to talk about GMRS repeaters. And we're going to talk about putting together a repeater this week. We're going to need some cabling, a duplexer, and of course the repeater itself. This week on LCARA Ham Radio. Welcome to LCARA Ham Radio. As you saw in the introduction, we're going to be talking about a GMRS repeater. And you might say, well, Brian, why do you need a repeater? Well, technically with GMRS, you don't. With GMRS, you could just do handy-talkie to handy-talkie, and that's what a lot of people do. Not a problem whatsoever. The biggest drawback to handy-talkie is you're limited in your power, and you're also limited to line of sight. And if you have a hilly environment, a mountainous environment, an urban environment with a lot of buildings and so forth, your line of sight communications can be way down to just a few hundred yards or meters, or it could be a little bit further than that. When we tested a couple of GMRS radios in a previous video, we were getting about 1.5 miles, but it was not the best audio or reception. So why not introduce a repeater? And a lot of people that are into GMRS FRS-based radios may not even be aware that you can even do a repeater, and the answer is absolutely you can. What we're showing you here in the wiki-based table here for FRS and GMRS are the channels that are set aside for these two services. We're mainly going to focus on the middle columns and to the right there for GMRS. And you'll notice that GMRS channels 1 through 7 give you up to 5 watts of power. There's nothing wrong with 5 watts of power. It's actually quite good. And if you're on a lake, out on the ocean maybe, but line of sight is really good, that's probably all you need, line of sight that way. Now here in southeastern Kentucky, because of the hills and some of our mountains, it's very difficult to communicate with anybody more than just a few hundred yards away sometimes, especially in eastern Kentucky, where I happen to be just on the edge. So if we drop down, you'll notice that we actually have some channels that go much higher than that. Now let's talk about those first 7 channels. You'll notice that the frequencies are set automatically for GMRS, and your radios typically come pre-programmed for those channels. So if you buy a proper GMRS radio like the B-Tech V1, and there's some others out there, the Terras and the Midlands and so forth, you potentially have up to 5 watts, but again, it'll be point to point. In a lot of those cases, you'll be limited to that line of sight communications, but it does sound pretty good with that 20 kilohertz bandwidth column that you see there to the right hand side. But couldn't we introduce a repeater? Now if you come down, you'll skip over channels 8 through 14. Those are reserved primarily for lower powered based radios and so forth. If we come on down to channels 15 through 22, and let's switch over to the next table, you'll notice that these channels from the GMRS side of it there on the middle to the right, we can go up to 50 watts. You'll actually find GMRS mobile radios that can communicate much higher power than the handhelds, and repeaters can also utilize that higher power as well. We also have wideband for GMRS, so 20 kilohertz again, where we can use channels 15 through 22 for output channels, and we can use the channels that are not listed but are below that for what we call repeater input channels. And so the input will come in on 467-7000 for our repeater. You can choose any of those based on the corresponding channel above. Ours is going to be basically on channel 21, so we can put the radio on channel 21. We can put a tone in the radio like you would a normal ham radio. Our tone is going to be 118.8, and the input channel will be on 467-7000. The output channel will be on channel 21. All right, so this allows the repeater to extend our reach. That's the big deal. If you've got a great location where you have an antenna up on top of a tower maybe, maybe in a best case scenario up on top of a mountain, you're going to get a much better extension of reach for your communications. And here in southeastern Kentucky, that's a big win for us because of the hills and mountains in our area. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take advantage of channel 21, 462 7000 for output. We're going to see 467 7000 for input on the repeater, and we'll do an offset of 5 megahertz to accommodate that with a tone of 118.8. So it has some ham radio-like capabilities, but it'll still be those GMRS frequencies where you don't have to have a ham license. You can just purchase the GMRS license for $70, good for 10 years. Now, to really get this project off the road, or on the road, we need to go ahead and logistically pull everything together. The first thing you'll need to do is either create or purchase a GMRS-based repeater. Bridgecom makes such a repeater, and our club president, AC4DM, already had one of these on his farm. Not being used a whole heck of a lot. The initial purchase was to facilitate family communications. He does have family in and around the area, but it doesn't get used a whole lot. And we thought, well, why not put it up at the main repeater site where we have a nice antenna, a Comet GP3, and give it some extended reach, not only for his family, but also for people in the community. So this can become a community asset. Here we're looking at a duplexer, and we're going to use the same antenna that we're using for our 2-meter repeater. If you look on the left-hand side, you can see that we have a 2-meter range of frequencies, and on the right-hand side, we have UHF range of frequencies that we'll use for GMRS. We use the same antenna for 2 different repeaters. But we needed to create some cables. The cabling coming into the shack currently goes from the 2-meter 70-centimeter antenna, Comet GP3, directly into the 2-meter repeater that we have on site there at the shack. What we want to do is use the same antenna, so we're going to put in this duplexer, and we need to create some patch cables or jumper cables. The antenna cable is going to go into the top side of the duplexer. We need 2 cables, one to go to the 2-meter repeater and one to go to the GMRS repeater. And that's what we're doing here, is we're putting some of these jumper cables together. I'm always amazed at how quickly AC4DM can put cables together, and of course we all have learned how to put these cables together now, but he's so fast because he's done it so much. And you can see we've got a good pair of crimpers there that we're crimping on that UHF based connector. So we're soldering the tip after we trimmed off some of the copper braid in the center conductor, and this soldering of course will give us a good connection, and as we'll see in a few minutes, we're going to test that to make sure that we don't have any shorts. So we needed to create a couple of these cables about the same length, and again, one will go to the 2-meter and one will go to the GMRS repeater using the same antenna but different frequencies. Here we're doing a test fit on the duplexer to make sure our new cable will in fact fit, and you can see they fit just fine. The duplexer is using SO239 based ends, and we're using 259 ends on this part of the cable. The other end of the cable actually has N connectors, and the reason we're using N connectors there is that on your repeaters, typically you'll have N connectors. At least the repeaters that we have N connectors on the back. So the cable is actually going to have SO239 259 on one end on the cable and an N connector on the other end. Here we're testing the SO239 on a different cable to the top side of that same duplexer. Now we're testing our tone.
Leave it down, leave it closed.
Quick and easy way.
Alright, hold there.
Now we go to the outside. Outside, you can see the N connector and the SO259 on the other end. Now we're test fitting a dummy load. We're actually going to build these and give a couple of these away a little bit later, so stand by for that. But simple resistor-based dummy load, and we're going to turn off the trusty MFJ analyzer, and we're going to see if we have any problems. Now we're not testing SWR here. What we're really just testing is our ohm load, just to make sure that we don't have something weird. Short, the cable wasn't built well, the ends weren't put on right. You can see it's coming in at about 47 on the resistance, pretty darn close to 50. Alrighty folks, that's the logistical part. We have our repeater, we have our cables, we have our duplexer. In the future, next video, we're going to show you the installation. For LCARA Ham Radio, I'm KY4BDP Brian, and if you like these videos, give us a thumbs up on the like meter there and let us know if you like this type of content. We're excited to get this repeater on the air and utilize it as a community asset. Stay tuned for part 2 coming up in just a little while.